I have to say, a tweet from Rob Harris. We'll get to who's sitting next to me in a moment. He's on shot. This is a member for McKellar. Thanks for your company, Jason Falinsky.
Thank you, Peter Van Onselen.
We don't have... I'm very well. We've got a lot to get through in this program. Guest host filling in for Christina Keneally today. We had
very guest.
Ex-Labor Premier, so we thought we'd bring a Liberal MP in as the guest host.
A current Liberal MP equals an ex-Labor MP.
Something like that. Yeah. Something like that. Well, according to George Christensen, being an ex-Labor Premier, who cares? It's the B game. State politics. He said that on Twitter to Phil Dalladakis, who is the small business minister out of Victoria. Do you agree with that? State politics is the B game?
George comes up with, you know, fighting words. I've got to say, them
for a guy that's going to spend a career on the backbench, is that, what do you reckon?
I wouldn't say that.
You know, you think he's from...
Oh, mate, George is a really smart guy. But no, I would say one of the things that I reckon is that state politics gets overlooked too much by the media. I mean, they are in control of it. A couple of important things like schools and police and roads.
Well, they're in charge of the important things other than national security and a bit of national economic policy.
That's right. Well, a bit, all of it.
A little bit. They should fix that up. Just a quick one though. We were hearing Bill Shorten there. He was talking, and some free assessments of the performance that he gave. Rob Harris from the Herald Sun. He said, quote, "This is the worst bill presser I've seen in ages." So there you go. He was getting angry at some of the journalists. We'll play some footage of that a little bit further into the program. But I want to get stuck into your side first. We should preview for our viewers' sake that we're going to be joined by Tim Watts, Labor MP. At that moment in time, you cease to be my co-host, Jason Falinsky. You will become a panellist. We can't have favouritism between the two sides. I'll grill you both. But before we get to that, a few things we're going to go through. And in a moment, we are going to go to a serious story and talk about some of the terror incidents down in Melbourne and cross to some of our reporters on the scene down there. But first up, General Petraeus waiving his speaking fee to speak at a Liberal Party fundraiser. What do you reckon?
Well, very generous guy. He should do it more often, I think.
Is that part of what Bill would consider banning foreign donations? Would foreigners be able to turn up and be able to deliver speeches at domestic fundraisers, do you think, under his proposed legislation?
Well, you'd have to ask Bill. I don't know.
I mean, he's not making the donation, General Petraeus.
No, he's not. I mean, look, I think that...
It's a donation in kind, though, isn't it? Because he's waiving his fee.
It would, under the New South Wales legislation, it would be a donation in kind. But I think it's important to hear from people like General Petraeus. He's obviously a very important guy. He's done a lot of stuff around the world. So, you know, look, if he has to waive his fee to get his message out, then I think that's a good thing.
All right, it's hashtag to the point if you want to follow us here. I'm joined by Jason Falinsky, filling in for Christina Keneally, but don't fear, those of you who are still watching, she will be back tomorrow.
She told me she just needed, you know, a mental health day from PVO. So
is that what it was all about? Yeah,
I get
she's got that in her contract ever since taking over the program. But listen, the other one, okay, fine, the General Petraeus thing.
Yep.
Trying to inoculate himself as well as feeding off some of what was in this Four Corners story yesterday. Bill Shorten is saying that Labor would ban foreign donations. Now, it's no secret that there's been a fair amount of foreign donations going into the Liberal Party. All parties, but the Liberal Party in more recent times. Are you in favour of banning foreign donations?
So I got to say, I think the biggest thing that this parliament could do for our kids and, you know, the future is actually reform donations and get money out of politics in Australia at all levels.
So how would you do it? I mean, not piecemeal, so this is one part of it, maybe.
Well, so because New South Wales did it, but then you've got different... So, you know, if you're raising money for the federal member versus the state member, you get different rules. Doesn't make sense.
So you'd like to see a national uniform system between tiers of government?
Has to be national. And look, there are some countries...
Because money goes between state and federal.
Because money goes between state and federal. But the really big... No one disagrees with banning international or foreign donations. The big issue is where it stops or where it starts. Because it's easy to say, not to the Labor Party and the Liberal Party, but what about GetUp? What about Associated? What about unions? What about... And on that front, Bill is very, very quiet.
OK, so your point is, this is an interesting point, your point is that, even putting aside the GetUps, your point is that Labor won't take federal donations under what Bill Shorten's talking about, but that doesn't mean the unions don't take them and then the unions donate to the Labor Party.
That's right. Absolutely. And, you know, GetUp can't be ignored. I mean, it had $10.26 million in the bank the other day. As you know, that's more than a lot of state divisions of the Liberal Party and the Labor Party raised in 1 year. That's a significant amount of money, and they don't have to declare where any of that money comes from.
OK, well, so a full and frank banning of foreign donations, by the sounds of it, you're open to, but it would need to include those sort of second-tier, third-tier passing on of donations. What else, though? I mean, would you, for example, be interested in an entirely publicly funded scheme, or does that offend you as a Liberal?
That offends me as a Liberal. Okay. I think probably a better way to go is to do stuff around where you're banning, you know, what sort of advertising the political parties can do. Okay. So it doesn't stop media organisations from covering stuff, but it ends that demand for money because you can't do a lot of stuff that you would otherwise want.
I'll tell you what, it's hard enough to make a buck in the media these days with advertising without all that government advertising and political advertising also dwindling.
Well, that's not a bad point, but in the UK they've banned it, and you know it's worked quite well. So they have very limited options for what political advertising you can do.
There's constitutional barriers. We saw Barry O'Farrell and Nathan Rees, in a sense, you know, in unison, there was like a banning of the ability of business.
No. But see, that's an important point. Nathan Rees banned business, but didn't ban the unions.
Yeah, so Barry O'Farrell added the unions, but then the unions won in the High Court.
They did, but the High Court made it quite clear that if the New South Wales government went back and said, if you cap union donations at $5,000, not at zero, that'd be okay. It was capping it at zero that the High Court said was a breach of the implied right to free political expression in the Constitution.
We will come back to this when we talk to Tim Watts. Let's move in to some of our serious news from down south. I'm talking about Victoria, the terror that has struck in Melbourne after a man took a sex worker hostage in order to lure police to an apartment block in suburban Brighton. Islamic State has since claimed responsibility for the attack. Our Sky News Melbourne reporter Patrick Murrell is at the scene. Pat, take us through what happened last night and what have the police had to say today?
Well, as you say, this 29-year-old man has met with a sex worker at a service department here in Brighton, just south of Melbourne. At some stage after 4 o'clock, she's made a call to police saying that she's been involved in a hostage situation. That call has only lasted about 20 seconds. Police have rushed to the scene just as they're starting to receive reports of an explosion at Brighton. That explosion later turned out to be the sound of gunfire. The man had shot dead an attendee working at the service department. That man is a Chinese national, an Australian national of Chinese origin. Police arrived at the scene. Terror police arrived at the scene. They cordoned off the area, and a short hostage situation followed. At around some stage during the hostage situation, the man has made a call to a television network saying that he's doing this attack on behalf of ISIS. At around 6 o'clock, he's rushed out at police, firing his gun. Here's what the police chief commissioner had to say about what happened next.
At that time, we continued with the scene, clearing people from the scene. The tactical command was present at the scene, and subsequently he has came out of the apartment with a shotgun and has commenced to fire at police at the entryway to the apartments as he's come out of his apartment. He's been exchanged in gunfire with police and has been fatally shot by police at the scene.
Now, while this exchange of gunfire has been going on, police have rushed bystanders into the coals just over my left shoulder, including our own reporter Aaron Young, who was caught up in that event. They've been in there while this exchange has gone on. 3 police firing at the offender who's come out of the building. He's been shot dead. 3 police officers wounded, 2 with wounds to their hands, 1 with wounds to his neck and ears. 1 was treated at the scene, 2 taken to hospital. They are all non-life-threatening injuries, and they're all expected to make a full recovery. The woman in question, the escort, did receive some minor injuries but was not seriously hurt. She was not bound and although she is mentally traumatised, has not received any serious injuries. Now, the man in question is 29-year-old Yaqub Kali. He is actually from Somalia. He fled to Australia as a refugee quite some years ago with his family, and he was known to both police and counter-terror police. He's been before a court with charges that were later dropped regarding a planned attack on an army base in Sydney, and he was actually in jail recently for a home invasion where he violently assaulted one of the occupants inside. Now, it's been revealed that he was out on parole at the time that this attack was committed. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, served 3, got out on parole, and actually severed his leg bracelet, his leg tracking device before embarking on this spree, and police are searching his home as we speak.
He had served significant jail time. He'd then become eligible for parole at a later point than he might have hoped, because his sentence had been increased because of poor behaviour. This is the advice I have: terrible behaviour in prison. He's been compliant, including drug tests, attending appointments and observing a curfew. That's the information that I have to this point. As with all of these matters, though, we'll look at each and every element of this act, and if there are learnings, if there are improvements that can be made, then of course we stand ready to do that.
Now, you heard the Premier there defending the state's parole laws. Malcolm Turnbull earlier today had a few more harsh words about it. The man, as you heard earlier, claimed responsibility on behalf of Islamic State. They've also claimed responsibility, saying that he is one of their soldiers. The Police Chief Commissioner, though, was a little sceptical of that claim, saying that, Peter, they claim pretty much responsibility for almost every attack done on Western soil.
All right, Patrick, appreciate the update. Thanks very much for that. We're going to continue with this coverage very shortly, going to Ella Duffy, who's at the gunman's house, Jason Falinsky. But talking to Patrick just then, he made the point that this fellow, the terrorist, I suppose, is a former refugee, a Somali refugee. How does that square with this debate that we had last week with the head of ASIO saying that there's no link between refugees and terrorism? Senator Hanson wasn't very happy about it. The head of ASIO was defended by George Brandis, defended by Julie Bishop, defended by the Prime Minister even. But Tony Abbott also wasn't very happy about it. There's a bit of a war of words on what that meaning really is.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sit well, does it? I mean, yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean,
well, it's an interesting one. I mean, he's obviously a refugee, so to my mind, in plain speak, that draws a link between refugees and terrorism, and we've had previous refugees that have been involved in terrorism. I accept the point, though, having said that they are being radicalised, the experts tell us, not because they are refugees, but by local radicals who, you know, are often homegrown or whatever it might be. Now, that, to me, I understand the point that the head of ASIO is trying to make. He doesn't want people to misunderstand the link between some refugees and terrorism, but it doesn't change the fact that there is a link. The issue is, you know, to not have that overshadowed by the homegrown radicalisation which is happening. And by the looks of it, we're speculating a little bit, but by the looks of it, for this Somali fellow, a little bit during his prison time would be my guess.
That looks that way. I mean, look, my take on what the ASIO chief was saying was effectively, if we just focus on this particular group, we'll be missing a broader picture.
And that's a very fair point.
Yeah, and that's what I took it to mean. But I'm not an expert on this sort of stuff. But, you know, when you get the experts telling you that, you're kind of duty-bound to listen to what they're saying.
The thing I wondered about, and look, this is just my take on it, no one's bought into this, but I wondered to what extent the head of ASIO, as George Brandis told me, close to midnight, Senate estimates, Pauline Hanson has a particular agenda. I just wondered to what extent he was trying to make sure that her agenda didn't distort, and he perhaps accidentally distorted a little bit himself, trying to avoid that happening. But
well, we've had situations in the past where the head of ASIO has rung parliamentarians to say some of the public comments they're making are unhelpful. Maybe you're right, maybe it was part of that. I don't know.
All right, well, let's continue this coverage out of Melbourne. Our Sky News Melbourne reporter Ella Duffy, as mentioned before, she is at the gunman's home. Ella, walk us through what's been happening there.
Well, Peter, police have been executing those search warrants of this home where 29-year-old Yaqub Kari lived with his mother. As you can see behind me, Sherwood Place remains closed off. Now, where I'm standing is in Roxburgh Park. It's about 20 kilometres north of Melbourne CBD. It's also in the opposite direction to where these attacks occurred in Brighton. Now, as you can also probably see behind me, police have set up several forensic tents out the front of this property. Forensic teams have been scouring this home. They've also, they appear to have removed several items from this home and taken photographs of the home inside and out. They've also searched a car that's in the driveway of this property. Unsure at the moment if they've removed anything from that car, but police, both federal and state police, remain here at the scene searching that home. As I said, neighbours have returned back home to their properties, or they've left home, and many have expressed surprise at the scene that's confronted them as they've left their homes. Some say that they're surprised that this could have happened. Others say they're not so much, but all seem to be completely unaware that this man had such a violent criminal past. No doubt police will be speaking to them today as they remain here at the scene throughout the morning as they try to piece together exactly the events that led up to this attack in Brighton, so far from where this man lived.
All right, Ella, thanks for the update. Many thanks. Cheers. It's an interesting one, isn't it, Jason Falinski? I mean, you know, parole laws, I get it. You know, the whole point is that if people seem like they're being well behaved over a defined period of time, then they get an early release. The evidence is that he obviously must have performed or met those KPIs, but there's violence before that, there's radicalisation, there's evidence of it, etc., etc. You know, the second that someone who's paroled does the wrong thing, God, you can understand the community absolutely cracking it with that.
That's right. And I mean, the other thing about it, I think, is also that, you know, terrorism, when we invented parole laws, there weren't really terrorists in the world. And and maybe this isn't a fit for purpose system. And that's why most Western democracies are trying to come up with new systems to deal with.
Well, like one, maybe what you're suggesting, it's a state jurisdiction much more than a national, I get that, but maybe the sort of thing you're implying, which intuitively I don't have a problem with, is that where terror incidents are concerned, parole goes out the window.
Yep, that's right. Or control orders or any of
Whatever.
those sorts of things, yeah.
All right, well, the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, he's questioned how the offender was in fact out on parole. We're joined now from Canberra by our Sky News political reporter, Jen Beshwadi. Jen, the PM, echoing a little bit of what we're saying here. He'll be talking to the Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews, about this.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. He spoke to Daniel Andrews yesterday, last night, following the attack, and again this morning. Now, he did call this a shocking crime, a cowardly crime, a terrorist attack that has shocked Australia. He said there'll be a number of questions that need to be answered. The most grave of all, as you've been talking about, is how was this man on parole? Now, we have heard Patrick say that he did serve his time. That's the question here. He did serve his time in prison and was released. And one of the questions might also be, why wasn't he given a longer sentence following his, or given that he has a violent history? And that's something that the Prime Minister mentioned today. He does have a long record of violence. He was acquitted of a terrorist plot back in 2009 at the Army barracks in Holsworthy. He was also in jail for a number of violent incidents, including assaults, drug use, and when he was in prison, he was also charged with offences there because of his behaviour. So that's one of the questions that the Prime Minister wants answered. He was speaking in Canberra this morning.
There are some very, very grave questions, and I have raised these today with the Victorian Premier, whom I called last night and I called again this morning. How was this man on parole? He had a long record of violence, a very long record of violence. He had been charged with a terrorist offence some years ago and had been acquitted. He was known to have connections, at least in the past, with violent extremism. But he was a known violent offender. How was he on parole?
Now, the Prime Minister has offered his condolences to the victim of this attack. He also paid tribute to those police officers who responded, those that were injured. He also says this underlines the reason why there must be a swift focus of police officers in light of the recent terrorist attacks. And in light of this attack, the Prime Minister says that the terror threat level won't be raised. He says that at this stage it does seem as though that this man was acting alone. It wasn't a coordinated attack. The acting AFP Commissioner was speaking with the Prime Minister.
We are constantly putting people under review, depending on the amount of intelligence that comes through, the actual investigations that are ongoing. So if someone comes up as part of that, a peripheral target, phone numbers come up, those sort of things, then people get reassessed. This is how the process works. It's not a stagnant process that does not move. People move in and out of the outer rings based upon the threat at any given time.
Jen, on a very different topic, there's some debate and discussion and concern around the whole issue of Chinese donations after that story last night. The Prime Minister's weighed in.
Yeah, that's right. He says that any threat or any foreign influence that threaten the Australian politics or election is a threat on our sovereignty. This is, of course, following those revelations that two high-profile businessmen have been donating to political parties here, have links to the Chinese Communist Party and have been raised previously by ASIO. The Deputy Prime Minister said today that any external nation trying to buy influence into this country should not occur. The Prime Minister, we know, has launched a review into the espionage laws. This was launched in May. He says that he is committed to ban foreign donations.
Threats to our sovereignty are very serious. Early last month, in early May, I asked the Attorney General to review our espionage laws, to review our laws relating to the activities of foreign governments in Australia, and he is going to present a report on that as to what changes we may need to make. But we take it very, very seriously. The sovereignty of Australia, the sovereignty of our democratic processes, free from foreign interference, is a matter of the highest concern.
Peter, it was also revealed that Labor Senator Sam Dastyari had lobbied for one of these Chinese businessmen to try gain an Australian citizenship. That has, of course, raised some eyebrows. However, the opposition leader Bill Shorten defended Mr Dastyari today. He said that he expects most of his members of the Labor Party to help with their constituents.
Do you know what I reckon is red hot? You had a trade minister trade envoy, who signed a $880,000 contract with one of these companies, even the day before he had left Parliament. This is red hot. And this sort of conduct where you move seamlessly from a senior position in government to working for some of the people who you're actually making policy for the day before, I don't think that is appropriate. In terms of Senator Dastyari, he has been penalised for his indiscretion in the past, but I know that he will vote to ban foreign donations, and I want to see Mr Turnbull show the same leadership we are showing.
So some bipartisanship there from the opposition leader in that call to ban foreign donations. And we also see another issue where the opposition leader is willing to work with the Prime Minister, and that's with energy policy. And this is, of course, as the upcoming Finkel report is due on the future of the energy or the future of the national electricity grid. There are a number of recommendations that the Chief Scientist, Alan Finkel, will make, one being possibly an EIS, or an emissions intensity scheme. However, that's already been rejected by the government. There is one, though, that the one avenue that Finkel may take, and that is an LET, a low emissions target, which means that there is a target, or that some producers must produce low emissions energy, so they have to reach that target. And that's something that opposition leader Bill Shorten agrees with. He says that this could possibly end an 8-year-long battle of climate policy. The Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull today didn't really say much. He did say that he'll wait for the Finkel report. However, the Nationals may be on board with this. Barnaby Joyce today saying that an LET may be the way to go.
Well, like all these things, there's sort of the details. I've said before, it's vastly more likely we're going to be able to get a coal-fired power station built to provide baseload power under something like an LET.
So we'll just have to wait and see what Dr Finkel does recommend. He'll be handing down his report to all state and territory leaders and the Prime Minister at the COAG meeting in Hobart on Friday.
All right, thanks very much for that, Jen. We'll talk to you again next hour. Cheers.
Thanks, Peter.
Jason, we have to go to a break now. Why don't you throw to it? Your first time co-hosting to
So
the
how
pod?
do I do this?
Well, you just
see you
say
after the break.
coming up after the break. I don't know. You don't know what's next, though, I suppose. Good luck.
Coming after the break, Bill Shorten explains himself.
Let's be honest, things need to change. So at AGL, we are getting out of coal, starting 2022 and ending 2050. We can't just switch off today or things won't switch on tomorrow. So we're working to make sustainable affordable for everyone, all with no compromises for you. Easy to manage and with round-the-clock support. As one of the biggest energy companies, we can create the biggest change. So, you with us?
When I told my friends I was refurnishing with everything from a Lazy Boy gallery, there are a few raised eyebrows. But these days, Lazy Boy offers almost everything. Lazy Boy Furniture Galleries will surprise you. lazyboygallery.com.au.
Which small car comes with a bold new look? New Kia Rio. Rio S from just $17,490, drive away with auto.
I just saved $46 on groceries.
I just saved a lot more than that on car insurance. It's because I applied for Woolworths Comprehensive Car Insurance online.
Not bad, eh? And not only that, I can pay my premiums monthly at no extra cost. And you know what else? If you're over 25, they'll beat any current comparable renewal notice. How's that for competitive? Great value car insurance. That's why I pick Woolies.
Everywhere I look, everybody's stressed. Stop to live up here and start live with this. You want to know how? When you cook, you make love to everybody. That's what Italian food is. Love and sauce. You got to start with the best. And you, have you eaten?
Feels like home to me. Feels like I'm all the way back where I belong.
Every day we need to surpass excellence. Hi, I'm Kari and this is my story.
Kari's father started the business 33 years ago.
Dad said to me, I need to bring it into the future, and then I begged the bank for a loan and I started building sheds. It's gone from 3 people to 43 people.
We do have the most modern facility to manufacture for the mining industry.
I want clever, smart jobs that you wake up in the morning and think, yeah, I want to go to work because I'm going to do something special.
Authorised by Brendan Pearson, Canberra.
Who would? You could make it wood. Because this beautiful timber floor stores carbon, transformed from the atmosphere by a growing tree using sunlight. So you could say you're walking on sunshine.
You know, there are some things in life that just aren't meant to be enjoyed alone. Tim Tam, the share you can't compare.
Meet Cody. She's as picky as they come. That's why we picked her as one of our official online pickers. The people who personally pick your shopping in store when you shop online at Woolworths. And right now, you can get free delivery on your first shop. So go online and let one of our pickers do the shopping for you. Woolworths Online Shop, where only the pickiest pick your shopping.
That's why I pick Woolies.
Well, look at that. A crispy golden hash brown at midday. What a rebel. McDonald's all-day breakfast.
Welcome back. Christina Keneally, I don't know where she is. She's AWOL, but filling in for her today, Jason Falinsky, member for McKellar.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for your company. Enjoying yourself. Glad to be here.
It's like being on the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah,
it
yeah,
really
right,
is.
all right. Well, we're going to be joined by Labor's Tim Watt shortly, and you're going to move into panellist role. But in the meantime, I will get your thoughts on this, but first let's get the facts of the story. Before the political spin, Adani has announced the green light for its $16.5 billion Carmichael Mine project in northern Queensland. Now, it comes after a factional split within Labor put the mine's future in doubt, apparently, when the Deputy Premier failed to announce her support for the federal loan. Joining me now is our Sky News reporter, Danielle Robinson. Danielle, take us through these events.
Well, today Adani has announced that they are given the green light, but they have failed to announce how this will be financed and whether they have a loan for the rail network. I did speak to a representative from the company not long ago, and they said they are working towards financial close. Of course, we know that the big four banks here in Australia have distanced themselves from the company, but today the representative said that they have never approached an Australian bank for a loan. Rather, they are looking overseas. They say they are still in negotiations with finances across the world. They wouldn't give any more details of that, but although they have given the green light today, it still must be taken with caution as these finances are not yet set in stone. What they have announced, though, is that Adani will be funding $3.3 billion of the project, but where the other $13 billion or so is going to come from is still very much unclear. Of course, as you mentioned, this has come amid factional fighting within the state Labor government over a $1 billion federal loan. Initially, the Queensland government said they would not put their backing behind a $1 billion loan from the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility. And then the Treasurer Curtis Pitt came out and said that they will do what is required. Now, this has, of course, caused a lot of controversy over the last few years, and the Greens have come out today and said that Adani's announcement today is just a ploy to squeeze $1 billion from taxpayers. But if it does go ahead, though, as they say it will today, it is going to create up to 10,000 jobs in Townsville, which, of course, we know is suffering from an unemployment rate of 11.2%, and it is going to generate an economic boost that is much needed in North Queensland. Peter?
All right, thanks for the update, Danny. Much appreciated. Is this definitely going ahead, Jason Falinsky, the Adani mine? I mean, there are still a few question marks. Sarah Hanson-Young was talking about that earlier.
Well, the Greens are absolutely opposed to this, but look, I mean, they're saying that they reckon they can make it work. I mean, this is a marketplace. Let them go for it. The truth is, I think the Labor Party in Queensland is just massively divided on this, and it's causing them all sorts of trouble.
Well, let's get some thoughts on that. You can revert to panellists. Our other panellist joining us today is indeed Labor's Tim Watts. He's in the wall, I'm assuming. Here he is. Oh, no, that's not him. There he is. All right, thanks very much for your company. Now, listen, let's get to this issue up in Queensland. We were just talking about it, Tim Watts. I mean, what's going on there? The Deputy Premier refusing to buy in on this. Is it a factional split? What's going on? Why does one half of the Labor Party in Queensland want Adani and the other half doesn't?
Well, look, Peter, I'm not a member of the Queensland Cabinet, so I'll refrain from speculating about what's going on inside the cabinet of another state government. What I will say, though, is that people in regional Queensland are perfectly entitled to want the federal government to be trying to help them to invest in jobs in their regions. I mean, there is an employment crisis in these areas. What I would say, though, and this is where federal Labor is fully united, spending $1 billion on a train line in that area is not a very imaginative, it's not a very creative way of creating jobs in that region. It's not a good way of spending public funding. The return that you get on that $1 billion of public money, that federal money, for that train line going to the Carmichael mine is not a good return in the jobs term.
Well, let me jump in on that. I mean, Jason Falinsky, that's not an unfair point. I would have thought as a market liberal you wouldn't be too keen on putting $1 billion of public money into a railway line that's really about one company.
Well, g'day, Tim. How are you? I guess what I would say, though, is this is an independent body. It makes an assessment. It's a concessional loan. We do all these things on... we do all the, you know, we often provide, the federal government often provides intervention in marketplaces where, if not for a critical piece of infrastructure, you're not going to get economic growth. So, you know, this isn't the first place it's happening. You know, it happens in a lot of other places.
Tim Watts, you were laughing when Jason Falinsky was talking about this being
well, I'm an amusing guy, come on.
I mean, the Nate, I mean, really, we have seen in recent days some of the social media performances of directors on the NAIF, their relationships with the Resources Minister, Matt Canavan. I believe that she's even a donor to the LNP in Queensland. So they're obligated to act independently, but some of the public comments coming out of these bodies do call that into question at the moment. I don't know if Jason's seen, but the application form for the NAIF, it's 2 pages long. So this body will deliver the outcome that the government wants it to deliver.
Well, that's a pretty strong statement. I mean, Tim, what evidence do you have of that? I mean, you're accusing directors... You're accusing directors of not upholding their statutory duties. That's a pretty serious accusation.
Well, there is enormous record on the enormous evidence on the public record of social media comments from a director consistent with the LNP line.
I think we've jumped the shark at this point, haven't we?
Okay, do you call a donor to the LNP independent, Jason?
Oh, so Tim, the Labor Party's never appointed a donor to any government board anywhere in Australia. Never appointed a union official, never appointed anyone that's ever... And in fact,
hang on a second.
Interesting, this gets us to Chinese donors, doesn't it?
You'll get your chance again, but let's go to Tim first up. Yes. I mean, both sides of politics do appoint donors at different points in time. I don't like the whiff of it on either side. Is that something that should perhaps be ruled out?
The appointment of donors to public boards?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, I think it's pretty clear that this appointment has a view on this mine.
All right. Well, yeah, look, I find it hard to believe, I have to say, Jason Falinski, I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, but I just find it very hard to believe that it's not going to get approved through the process that's been put in place.
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
All right. We're going to move on, though. Something that I want to see if I can bring you two together on. Tim Watts, let me start with you. Admirable position by Bill Shorten on the issue of banning foreign donations to political parties. I agree with it. At this stage, the government is being coy because they get significant donations from foreign entities. However, shouldn't the ban, and this is something in fairness that Jason Falinski raised a little earlier in the program, shouldn't it extend to a ban on, for example, going through unions or going through other third parties as well from foreign donors? Because otherwise it becomes one and the same thing, doesn't it?
Well, let's call this for what it is, Peter. This is Malcolm Turnbull putting out the squid ink, trying to obfuscate this issue. Surely both sides of politics can agree that foreign parties should not be able to donate directly to political parties or their associated entities. Australia is an enormous outlier on this issue. It's very rare that nations don't ban these kind of practices. Now, I just put it back to Jason. Why can't you support this? Labor's had a private members' bill in the Parliament for 6 months.
Well, let me tell you why I'm pretty sure, and this is what I'm interested in your view on. At the moment, is it right that, like, if Labor inserts this bill, if the government supports it and it removes foreign donors being able to provide donations to political parties, great, big tick from me. But would it still be the case that they would be allowed to donate to trade unions, which we know donate to the Labor Party? Would that still be possible? Because that strikes me as a loophole that should also be closed, surely.
Well, under the private members' bill introduced by the Labor Party, we would ban foreign donations either to the political parties or their associated entities. Now, you can have a conversation about whether that should extend further, but surely we can agree on this core principle.
But would that include
Why isn't
unions?
the government acting on that?
That's my question, though.
Well,
associated
entities?
Associated
entities.
OK. Well,
but
Jason
where do you
Falinski...
draw the line beyond that? I mean,
no, the answer is it doesn't include unions.
But they're associated entities, aren't they?
Well, not under the private members' bill that the Labor Party has put to Parliament in a few months back.
Okay.
So that's what we
so
need to
unless
understand.
they're changing that, your understanding is that unions would still be able to be donated.
The Joint Committee on Electoral Matters has recommended that foreign donations be banned to political parties and associated entities, including trade unions and entities like GetUp. The Labor Party issued a dissenting report at the last minute to remove trade unions from that. The private members' bill in front of the House of Representatives at the moment also excises unions and GetUp from that ambit. So
OK, well, hold that thought. I mean, Tim Watts, I think your side of politics is on the side of the angels when it comes to banning foreign donations, but surely it does have to include unions and the like, and you can look at the equivalent for the Liberal Party. I don't, some sort of business equivalent, that's fine too, but it would have to include that to be a genuine fair dinkum thing, surely.
Well, it's fair to include associated entities. Where you draw the line beyond that becomes very murky indeed. I hear Jason keeps talking about GetUp, but there are many entities, overseas-based entities, that spend money in the Australian political debate. Just one off the top of my head, I know that the Gates Foundation invest money in advocating for international aid, for foreign development assistance. I don't think that would be very high on most Australians' list of concerns.
If I could jump in, I mean, Jason, for you, I'm less fussed about the GetUp side. I know that your side of politics are very exercised by what they do,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
I agree with Tim on that. I'm less fussed about GetUp. I am fussed, though, about trade unions. I mean, if they're being excluded, they are much more particularly affiliated trade unions. I mean, are you sure that this would provide for an exception for that? Because that would seem something that will be called out every day.
Yeah, that's right. And look, let's be clear. We have a choice here. We can either go down the UK route, which basically has not a lot of money in their political environment, or you can go down the US route, where every man and his dog has some sort of ginger group that can spend millions of dollars on a particular cause that they want to push, and you get some really, really bizarre outcomes in their electoral system. And you know that, and Tim knows that, and that's the juncture we're at the moment, and the choice we make here is an important one.
Well, you support our bill.
But do you accept, though, Tim Watts, that I think the government would be likely to support your bill as long as there was guarantees in it that trade unions aren't also going to receive foreign donations? Because that would strike me as a sticking point, understandably, between the two sides of politics.
Well, potential expansion of the prohibition is something you can argue about later. Surely we can all agree on this core proposition, particularly given the things that were disclosed on Four Corners earlier this week. We've been leading on this issue. We've had a private member's bill in the Parliament since the start of the year. It's a very easy thing for the government to agree. If they want to take it further later, make the case for that. But just agree with the core proposition now. Otherwise, it looks like obfuscation.
Well, look, we're going to move on, but I have to say on that, I think that they are obfuscating, but I just think, to be fair dinkum, it has to include the trade union side of things because it's such an obvious link. But we'll all agree to disagree on that. Let's move on to something else. Jason Falinski, an $880,000 salary for a trade minister working for, I believe, a Chinese company or business entity of some description. It was described as red hot by Bill Shorten in his media conference.
It's got away with language, doesn't it?
Listen, it's not obviously in any way, shape or form illegal. No. It is what it is. But should it be something that we have cooling off periods for ministers before moving into these sort of positions?
Look, you know, it's a really touchy subject because what you're doing is you're saying to someone whether they can trade in their own labour, basically. You're restricting their ability...
Potential restraint of trade is your point.
Your ability to earn a salary after you leave politics, or indeed any job, is a really critical issue.
It's a bad look though, right?
Well, I don't quite understand what his job is, so you'd have to tell me more about it. But look, when people get skills at a particular job, if you work for IBM and they teach you how to code, you know, you're welcome to walk across the street to Microsoft and they can pay you more money for it. I mean, you know, that's kind of the world we live in, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's how people develop and how companies get better and how, you know, frankly, governments and businesses get better. In Singapore, they have a proactive system of actually circling people in and out of private sector firms, NGOs and Parliament, so everyone gets experience of what's going on and gets different perspectives on their jobs.
Tim Watts, stay with us. We're going to hold you over the break. When we come back, we're going to continue this panel discussion with Tim Watts for Labor and Jason Falinski for the government.
Small messes can be big problems, and using a traditional broom and dustpan is a back-breaking chore. Well, not anymore. Now, from the makers of the best-selling Hurricane Spin Mop comes the all-new Hurricane Spin Broom, the cordless, lightweight spinning broom that cleans up this mess, that mess, and every mess with ease. Now cleaning up after the kids is a breeze, whether it's broken chips or smashed snacks. It will even pick up a whole broken glass, keeping your family safe. The secret is the triple brush technology that rotates with cyclonic action, pulling in everything in its path. Simply roll over pet hair to pick it up fast. Even messy kitty litter on the floor is no problem. Our one-touch large capacity dustpan is built in and empties in seconds. Other sweepers can't clean along skirting boards. Hurricane Spin Broom side sweepers pull in dust and dirt like a street sweeper. A must near skirting boards without scratching. Its swivel steering combined with its lay-flat handle lets you hunt down messes, even under tight furniture.
The spin broom glides right around my furniture legs and scoops all those messes away without ever having to lift it up. And its wide mouth opening really gets a lot in there.
Perfect for hardwoods, laminates, even tiles. The bristles get deep into grout lines, and it's strong enough to pick up pancakes, or wet items like sticky rice or corn kernels, even ice cubes. With no bags, batteries or cumbersome cords, it weighs less than a kilo. Stop wasting your precious energy lugging out the vacuum or missing those messes with a dustpan and broom. Call Global Shop Direct or go online and order the ultimate lightweight cleaning tool for hard floors, the Hurricane Spin Broom. When you order today, we'll send you not one, but 2 Hurricane Spin Brooms, so you'll always have it close by when accidents happen. We know you'll love your Hurricane Spin Broom, but if for any reason you're not satisfied, just send them back for a full refund of the product price. This offer won't last. Call or go online to take advantage of this special buy one, get one free offer now.
Register today at Elite Singles, where you'll benefit from 100% verified profiles, an extensive personality test and tailored matches in your area. elitesingles.com.au. Never more ready to fall in love again.
Dreaming of a luxurious holiday? With Luxury Escapes, it's possible. We work with the world's best hotels to create incredible holidays with VIP inclusions at prices we can all afford. When you book with Luxury Escapes, you get extras like breakfasts, dinners, spa treatments, airport transfers, and even cooking classes. Enjoying a luxury holiday has never been easier. Last year, more than 250,000 Australians enjoyed travelling with Luxury Escapes. Here's how. First, download the app or go to luxuryescapes.com. Then, browse our offers, watch videos and read reviews of the hotels and tours. Select your travel dates or enjoy flexibility and choose your travel dates later. Purchase online or call one of our experts, available 7 days a week. The best offers don't last long and our members always find out first. Plus, it's free to join. So discover the world's best holidays today at luxuryescapes.com.
Style is intoxicating. It's effortless. It's knowing who you are. Style is limitless. Don't let your style harbour inside you. Build it with Austral bricks.
A friend once told me if I put colour back on my hair, it would make me look better.
Express yourself.
Stop saying that grey hair is not beautiful. Because it is. It is beautiful.
Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Christina Keneally is away today. She will be back tomorrow. I'm joined by Jason Falinsky and for our panel discussion by Tim Watts as well. Tim, I have to ask you, obviously, on a serious note, about what's happened down there in Melbourne. It's a pretty significant terrorist event. The city, no doubt, shaken up by it. Political leaders of all descriptions weighing in. Parole is one of the issues that's at play here. I mean, do you think that parole has to be looked at?
Well, I saw the Prime Minister's comments about this earlier today, Peter, and I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have. Certainly a question that crossed my mind at the time. Unfortunately, it's becoming all too common when these incidents occur that we start hearing about these criminal histories, particularly, I should say, with respect to violence against women. A pattern starts to emerge, so it's worth looking at this closely. That being said, parole laws were looked at in Victoria quite recently, and I noted the Premier, Daniel Andrews' comments that he would look at this issue in light of these events. So I think that is the response that the public want from their political leaders, issues being raised and being addressed in goodwill.
Jason Valinsky, is there not enough cooperation, do you think, between the Commonwealth and the states when it comes to determinations around parole? I mean, for example, I'm wondering about the extent to which federal intel plays into state parole boards when making their determination. If there's not an overlap there, that's a problem.
Yeah, well, all the information was available at the parole hearing, so it was a decision that was made with full information available to everyone. I was talking to Andrew Hastie before I came on. Andrew said, look, there needs to be better coordination between the Commonwealth and state governments, in particular around policing and response rates. And what we saw in London overnight, and he puts it a lot better than I do, is sort of where you get to when you've had a long period of time and a lot of practice and a lot of refinement of protocols to get an 8-minute response rate. So there is a lot of coordination that needs to happen between the Commonwealth and state governments, and it's a question worth asking and making sure that that's occurring. But I don't think in this parole case that was an issue at all.
OK, well, I'm going to be talking to Andrew Hastie later in the afternoon on Newsday about some of these issues. Tim Watts, I want to show you some footage of Bill Shorten at a press conference a little earlier. Rob Harris described it as not one of the better performances by the opposition leader. He got a little bit testy at a journalist who kept asking some pesky questions. Let's have a look. I'll get your reaction.
Sorry,
I'm asking about your part.
Listen, mate, if you want to hear the answers, you can ask as many questions as...
We've gone over this ground. What about Senator Dastyari? Does he have your support?
You've asked 6 questions. I'm answering them. You're raising serious issues. I'm going to treat that question as seriously as you think it should be taken. But why would the Liberal Party... Just you wait. Why would the Liberal Party...
So
Thank you. You've had 6 questions. Sorry, you've had 6 questions.
Tim Watts, is it 6 and then that's it? You don't get a 7th?
Oh, I think poor old Rob Harris might be still a bit upset about St Kilda's performance against the Western Bulldogs a couple of weekends ago. I don't know him to be that sensitive. Bill seemed pretty reasonable to me there. It's a press conference is a robust forum and seemed pretty run-of-the-mill to me.
Do you think that there was anything new or concerning for Senator Dastyari in that report last night?
No, I mean, look, on this issue of Australian citizenship, I can tell you that that is something that members of parliament, senators, deal with every day of the week. Indeed, just this morning, 2 people approached me in my electorate asking me to make representations about where their citizenship application is up to. Like in an electorate like mine, where 2/3 of my constituents are either born overseas or have a parent born overseas, this is a very large part of our job, interfacing with the Immigration Department. So there's absolutely nothing unusual about that. That is just run-of-the-mill, bread and butter, local constituency work.
All right. Well, what about your view on this, Jason Falinski? Are you cynical about the timing of the suggestion? We're almost out of time. Yeah. Cynical about the timing of the suggestion by Bill Shorten around foreign donations in light of some of the things. Is it a sort of a look over here, don't look over there when the Sam Dastyari stuff was happening?
Look, I want to believe the best about Bill. So, no, I'm not cynical about it. But, you know, when it comes to Sam, I would equally ask Tim, the 2 people who approached him this morning, were they billionaire Chinese business people? Were they offering to make donations to him? I mean,
look at you two. You're unable to get through an entire panel discussion without making political points.
Sorry. I just think, though, I mean, Tim is right to say that that's what happens as a member of parliament. Like Tim, about 2/3 of my electorate were born overseas or had parents who were born overseas. But, you know, it doesn't look good. Let's face facts.
All right, we're out of time, gentlemen. Tim Watts, appreciate you joining us. Christina Keneally will be back for the next time that we chat rather than taking a mental health day. Thanks for your company.
Thanks, guys.
Jason Falinski, appreciate you joining me across the hour. Hope it wasn't too painful.
It was actually quite enjoyable.
There you go. All right. Well, don't expect it to happen again. No. All right. We're going to go to a break now.
You didn't enjoy it, I take it.
Thanks for your company. Oh, you'll be back as a guest. As a co-host, that's a whole nother matter. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll be on Newsday time. Lucy Turnbull will be my guest in around about 10 or 15 minutes from now. And then, as mentioned before, Andrew Hastie after that. Back in a moment.